For those of you who follow me on Twitter, which you should really do by the way, you're probably well aware of my ravings about the demons list. I've ranted about their management, their public behavior, as well as plenty of other things, but I think today is the day I give them a break and treat them with a little more fairness. That is why today I'm making a comprehensive video about their history, instead of just rambling about one random aspect in a Twitter thread. Life is like a First, to address the elephant in the room. I've already talked about this before, so I'll keep it brief, but it's important to mention this because it highlights some other issues as well. Anyway, I think everybody already knows what I'm talking about at this point. It's the fact that the demons list calls itself official on their homepage. Now, I don't really want to repeat myself for the 50 billionth time, so I'll just say this as briefly as I can. But I will give a more detailed explanation in the description if you are so dense that you need one. Basically, in order for the demons list to call themselves official, they need the endorsement of RobTop as the creator of Geometry Dash. Since they do not have that, they cannot be considered official, and as a result, this header is incorrect. Now, on its own, that isn't really a big deal. When I first mentioned it in my video, I didn't make a big deal out of it either, and after I had a friendly chat with TGI, one of the list leaders, I was under the impression that this was going to be fixed relatively soon. That was 7 months ago. If you pull up the Pointer Crate website right now, you'll probably notice that it's still there. Alright, so before we go on, let me make one thing perfectly clear. Everything I say after this has nothing to do with the phrasing itself. Everything after this point is about how the demons list has handled this situation. This is all about leadership and the cohesiveness of the team, as well as transparency. This specific situation merely helped shed light on these problems. Anyway, so TGI said it would be removed soon, but to this day it has remained there. So what gives? Surely there must be some reason for this, right? Well, as it turns out, there is. Now, I'm not exactly sure when this happened, but the person who is responsible for the layout of the website, Stardust, has basically decided on his own that he considers the list official and will therefore not change it. It's kind of a bad sign to see that Stardust will not cooperate with the rest of the team when it does not suit his tastes. He's basically strong-arming the rest of the team to conform to his own desires. You have to remember that Stardust's job is to maintain the site and nothing more. He isn't an executive like TGI is. So if he's making decisions like this on his own, it kind of undermines the leadership of the entire team. I'm sure you're aware of this, but the demons list has their own Twitter account, which TGI does have control over. He has removed the word in question from their Twitter account, and yet the homepage remains the same. To me, this perfectly illustrates a conflict of interest inside the team, which they have been unable to resolve up until this point. The team is disorganized and uncooperative with each other, so I don't really see why we should trust them. So that's the Dust's role in the matter, but according to Poison, most of the list mods are against changing the homepage as well. And when asked for a reason, the best I could get was this, that it's a secret. Now, I don't want to be overly distrustful, but if you've been told one thing for several months, namely that it's going to be changed, and suddenly that changes due to classified reasons, I can't help but be a little suspicious of it. I mean, what reason could they possibly have to hide something as inconsequential as this? The only thing that makes any sense to me is if the reason in question is something they can't reveal because it would damage their credibility. It's just unnecessarily shady to hide something as trivial as this. Transparency is absolutely crucial, especially for something like the demons list, which relies on the trust of the community. Keep in mind that transparency involves sharing as much information about the team's decisions as possible, and not just when you're asked about it. If you withhold information until you're specifically asked about it, that's just a lie by omission. If they can't be open towards the community about things like this, I don't really see why we should trust them. Anyway, that's enough about that. I'm sure you've heard about N-Level's return to Geometry Dash recently, and you probably also know why he left in the first place. It's because he was exposed as a hacker. So just so we're all up to speed, I'll quickly recap what happened exactly and how it relates to the demons list. So once upon a time, N-Level was hacking using a method that had until then been undetectable, save for a pastebin that described his master plan. At some point, the list mods caught wind of this pastebin, and decided to ban end level from the demons list. They did this without providing a proper reason though, since they didn't want the paste bin going public. So the community became restless and started pressuring the demons list to unban him due to lack of evidence. So the demons list caved into the demands of the community and unbanned him, despite knowing for a fact that he was a hacker. Now this was a pretty stupid way to handle the situation, since it basically sends the message that the demons list is willing to cover for hackers if they face an unfavorable situation. The only reason they banned him again later, as far as I can tell, is because they ended up finding a reliable way to expose his methods other than the paste bin itself. If they hadn't found that, who knows how long they would have kept covering for him. Now, the thing is that, according to the list mods, the composition of the team was a lot different when this was going on than it is now. And that's fair, I guess. Maybe the same mistakes won't happen now that different people are making these decisions. However, that's exactly the problem, because some of the old people are still on the staff now, and even now the team will defend the actions they took when handling the end level situation, which just indicates that this could happen again if the opportunity presents itself. To me, it just looks like they haven't learned anything from this situation. I mean, why else would they still defend their decisions to this day? Lastly, I want to take a moment to discuss the terrorist organization known as Satch Squad. For those of you who don't know, Satch Squad is a server where a bunch of friends in the GD community hang out, kind of like pleb chat, I guess. Most of the list team is in this server, and the server is kind of notorious for organizing raids and such. Though I will admit that this is mostly based on hearsay, so take this with a grain of salt. One instance that I was a personal witness to is when C's server was raided. Granted, that's not exactly an irregular occurrence, but this time it was led by several members of the list team, to the point that the moderators of the server thought it was organized by the Demons List server. In actuality, it was Satch Squad. But the origin doesn't really matter, it's all about the people who were involved in the raid. Now obviously this doesn't apply to all of the mods, but you have to keep in mind that these are the people upholding one of the most well-respected ongoing projects in the community. To go ahead and raid a server for the hell of it truly highlights the immaturity of some of the members of the list team. Speaking of immaturity, I'm going to make a prediction here. I predict that a large portion of the list mods are going to respond to this video by just taking the piss out of it, instead of actually addressing the criticism. This prediction is purely a tactical strategy to prevent them from doing so, because if they did, it would just prove my point of them being immature. I've shown you my hand, Demons List, so try your best not to play into it. And this concludes my opinion on the Demons List team. The community tends to defend their every action regardless of context, but I think that's a pretty senseless thing to do, which is honestly the biggest reason I made this video. Very few people ever speak out against the Demons List, so I want to encourage everyone to stop being so lax about this and actually criticize them when they make missteps. If you don't do that, we will never see improvement on their behalf, and they'll naturally get more and more careless over time. Anyway, that about does it. Make sure to share your own thoughts and opinions in the comments, I always enjoy reading them. I'm sure there's still a lot to talk about, so don't hold back. Do try to be civil about it though.